paper written by Gregory Gilpin and Mikhail Kaganovich, analyzing the possible trade-off between the quantity and quality of teachers in American K-12 school system, where K-12 stands for kindergarten 12, which is the sum of primary and secondary years of schooling in the United States. The aim of this paper is to develop a dynamic general equilibrium model to analyze this possible trade-off and explaining how it is affected by the economic growth and what is the optimal policy that should be implemented by a public education agency whose goal is to maximize the per-student quality of basic education. Data for this paper, as I said, comes from American K-12 school system during the post-World War II period. During this period, we have seen a double in the teacher-student ratio, while the number of students per teacher has fallen from 25.8 students per teacher in 1960 to 15.7 students per teacher in 2005. But despite of this increase in individualized instruction, the students' test scores have not risen. The paper asks why. Well, according to Oxby and Leif, in a paper of 2004, in 1963, 41% of teachers were of the middle aptitude, comparing with other college-graduated workers, with a 17% above and 42% below, whilst in 2000, only 28% of teachers were of the middle aptitude, comparing with other college-graduated workers, with a 5% below and 5% above and 67% below. Oxby and Leif first noticed a decline in the relative quality of teachers comparing with other graduated workers. The results of this paper are the same as Oxby and Leif regarding a reduction in the relative quality of teachers, whereas the absolute quality of teachers increases over time thanks to the endogenous economic growth. On the other hand, the endogenous economic growth also causes a phenomenon called rising talent premium effect, which is the main cause explaining the reduction in the relative quality of teachers. In the model, we have households living in overlapping generation GT equal to 0, 1, and so on, and during their lives they have to choose whether to attend only at the first stage of education or to go to college. Becoming therefore skilled individual. And if they choose to go to college, then they have to face another choice, which is whether to work in the production sector or to become a teacher. And we suppose that they only base this choice on income purposes. The aggregate production function of this economy can be expressed as follows, where W is the total factor productivity of the economy, capital LT is the aggregate human capital attainment of unskilled individual, and HT is the aggregate human capital attainment of skilled individual, which is augmented by a coefficient theta t greater than 0, which represents the human capital augmentation that individual could gain by going to college. We have an education agency in this model, as I said, whose goal is to maximize per student quality of basic education, E, given by this formula, where ZT is the number of teachers to be hired in period T, times QT, which is the aggregate absolute quality of teachers in period T. And gamma and ni are the elasticity, where gamma stands between 0 and 1 and represents the elasticity of the quantity of teachers in the production of basic education quality, and ni greater than 1 is the elasticity of the quality of teachers in the production of basic education quality. The fact that ni is greater than 1 means that the quality of teacher is the only possible unbounded input in our model. And the paper analyzes this maximization problem under two different regimes with respect to teacher compensation. Merit pay regime, in which teachers are paid a competitive salary according to their human capital attainment, according to their marginal productivity, and collective bargaining regime, in which all teachers are paid the same salary, determined in the bargain between unions of teachers and the education agency. Well, under merit pay regime, the education agency has to face these budget constraints, which is simply given by the aggregate production function times tau of t, which is the uniform income tax rate of this economy. Then the quality of teacher strictly depends on t, on the amount of taxes collected by the government, And the quantity of teachers to be hired can be expressed as a measure of this set, where we suppose that A of omega is the level of innate ability of individual omega, which is uniformly distributed over 0A, and therefore the number of teachers to be hired can be expressed as a measure of the set which goes from AT upper bar, which is the highest level of innate ability among those who choose to become a teacher, and AT star, which is the ability cutoff level for attending college. We can see that under merit pay regime, the agency's optimal policy has a unique solution for the optimal level of QT and ZT, namely the educational agency chooses the level of AT upper bar given the amount of taxes collected by the government. This will determine a unique solution for the optimal level of teacher intake in period T, given the quality of basic education in the previous period and distribution of human capital attainment among people in generation GT, then the quality of teacher is uniquely determined by the budget constraint, and finally QT and ZT will jointly determine the quality of basic education in this period provided to people in generation GT plus 1 in the next generation. Under collective bargaining regime, the education agency has to set the level of salary paid to all teachers, and this level of salary, IT, will determine the highest level of human capital attainment among those who choose to become a teacher, because if a college graduated individual has a level of human capital attainment above H upper bar, he will work in the production sector whose salary is determined according to his real level of human capital attainment. In this case, the budget constraints for the education agency becomes the following, because now teachers are no more paid at the same rate as their college graduated peers working in the production sector, but they are paid at a different rate, which is IT. And the number of teachers to be hired can be expressed as a measure of this set, going from AT upper bar to AT lower bar, where AT lower bar is greater than AT star, than the level of the ability cutoff level for attending college, because obviously all teachers have to be graduates. Finally, we can state that under both regimes, the educational agency maximization problem has a unique solution for the optimal level of quality and quantity of teachers to be hired, given the quality of basic education in the previous period provided to people in this generation. In turn, QT and ZT will uniquely determine the quality of basic education in this period provided to people in the next generation, GT plus 1. And this iteration of recursion is called recursive dynamic equilibrium. Here we have the dynamic results. Since we suppose that mi is greater than 1 and gamma stands between 0 and 1, we admit that the absolute quality of teachers could increase over time. Therefore, the human capital attainment that individual could gain at the first stage of education also increase, but this increase is not equal for everyone. Given the kink form of the aggregate production function, these gains in human capital attainment happens disproportionately for most able individuals, and this effect is called the rising talent premium and leads the economy to an increase in income inequality. Therefore, for the educational agency, hiring most able individuals as a teacher becomes more and more costly, so the optimal education agency becomes hiring a larger number of low-quality teachers, a larger number of teachers along with a relative lower quality. Here we have all the derivatives to sum up. The ability cutoff level for attending college decreases over time because the level of human capital attainment that individual could gain at the first stage of education increase, so more and more people find convenient to go to college. Both the lowest and the highest level of innate ability among teachers decrease, so the relative quality of teacher comparing with other workers decrease, and the number of teachers to be hired in each period increase. Here we can see the evolution of the optimal policy for the education agency between two periods, period T and period T plus 1. In this top graph, we have the distribution of income among people in generation GT and generation GT plus 1, and the kink corresponds to the ability cutoff level for attending college, which decreases over time. By the difference between the two slot lines, we can notice the rising overall income inequality effect. In fact, the increase in income from period T to period T plus 1 for a less able individual is lower than the increase in income from period T to period T+1 for a more stable individual. In these vertical bars indicates the total cost of each teacher bill in period T and period T+1. The width of a bar represents the number of teachers intaken, represents Z, and the height of a bar represents the salary. From period T to period T+1, the educational agency is hiring a larger quantity of teachers along with a relative lower quality given by here. And obviously the deadweight loss represented by the triangular portion above the slot line increases over time because in period T+1 we are hiring a larger number of low quality teachers who nevertheless have to be paid at the same rate as their best peers. In the bottom graph we can see that the relative quality of teachers decrease because the ability capacity level decrease and also the highest level of innate ability among teachers decrease, whilst the absolute quality of basic education increase given by the maximum of these parabolas increase from period T to period T+1. So if we want to compare two economy starting from the same initial level of quality of basic education, whose only difference is the teacher pay arrangement, we can notice that obviously the uniform pay requirement imposed under collective bargaining regime ensures that most of teachers are paid above their human capital attainment, above their real marginal productivity. So we have under collective bargaining an inefficient allocation of educational funding, which doesn't happen under merit pay regime. So if we want to compare these two economies, we have that the quality of basic education under merit pay regime is greater than the quality under collective bargaining regime in each period. And this greater quality is attained through a larger number of teachers intaken in each period, therefore a lower student-teacher ratio under merit pay regime, along with a higher quality of teacher in this period attained through a more efficient allocation of educational fundings.